Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and for my cards today I'm using some brand new, just released wafer dies from Simon Says Stamp. This is from their Good Vibes release. I'll have a link to the release in my blog post. So I die cut some cardstock, but I set that aside for now. I want to do my backgrounds first. So I have my glass, my Tim Holtz glass craft mat here. Any glass mat will work, or even just a craft sheet. I just wanted something to press several different Distress Oxide colors onto. And I started with Tattered Rose, and then added a bit of Spice Marmalade because I wanted a more peachy sort of color. And then I've got Worn Lipstick, Picked Raspberry, and Peeled Paint. And you could totally do this with Distress inks. I just wanted to experiment some more with the oxides and doing different backgrounds. You can do the exact same thing with Distress inks. You'll just get a totally different look. So I have Distress watercolor paper here, the smooth side facing up. This is the pre-cut 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And for my first one, I am just picking up the color with a paintbrush and painting it on. And I'm going to use the new Hibiscus frame wafer die that I die cut from white cardstock, and then I trimmed it out. So I have this square here, and I'm just kind of using it as my guide to paint the colors on. And it's kind of funny how everything just looks like a blob of color. Like, it looks kind of pointless, but every time you hold the frame over it, it's like, oh, it makes sense. The blobs of color make sense. So I'm using a huge paintbrush to do this. This is a silver size 8 brush, and this brush is massive. You can use any brush for this, but this is just the one I pulled out. So I just kind of kept painting the color around in the areas I wanted it to be for this flower, and then added green where the leaf will be. And I'm not too worried about the colors running into each other or anything like that. That's kind of what I want. And once I was like happy with how this looked, I dried it with my heat tool just to speed up the process. You could let it air dry if you want. I just didn't have time for that. So after I did the first layer, let it completely dry, I went in with a second layer of these inks just to kind of intensify it. And I also like purposely made it messy. Like, I would apply the color and I'd also tap the brush to get some splatters and let those splatters mix into the wet area. I'm full on just kind of experimenting, roughly kind of know how this is going to turn out since I'm, controlling it with the brush, but also letting it sort of do its own thing because I don't want it to be perfect. So let the colors kind of mingle and do their thing, and splattering it on here and there just to get more of the background as well. And then with this one, once I am happy with it and I've splattered everything that can be splattered, I'm going to let it dry again, aka use my heat tool to completely dry this. And then once this is dry, I'm going to take my Distress spray bottle. Again, doesn't matter what spray bottle you use because I don't actually use the nozzle. I'm just using the actual little tube on the inside and just flicking that against my fingers to create a splatter. I let that sit for roughly a minute maybe, and then pick that up with a paper towel and you get the fun splatter effect. So that was background number 1 that I was playing with. And then for my second one, I'm kind of doing the same thing, but I have run the Distress watercolor paper through my machine with the embossing mat, and I embossed the new DEBRA background wafer die. So it's embossed rather than cuts, and it's embossed really deeply onto this watercolor paper. And then I'm just painting the colors onto it. And I only used my like peachy mixture and the 2 pinks on this. The green I'm going to save for the wafer die. And I chose all these colors specifically because it's this week's color throwdown challenge. That's why I wanted that specific sort of peachy color. So I just quickly painted it on, added a bit of splatter, set it aside. Really, really simple. Same with this one. In fact, all of it's pretty simple. For my third background, I'm painting it on again. This time just kind of painting everything in sort of a circular design because, again, I want to back this behind the DEBRA. This time actually die cut. You can see it there kind of off screen. Instead of embossing, I die cut a piece, and then this is just going to go in the background. So I just painted the colors kind of in radiating circles, and again, left off the green this time because I'll just bring the green in with the sentiment die cut later. And then I went back in while everything was still wet and just added another layer of color. And then that one, I didn't do any splattering. I just set it aside. And then for my last one, I did some ink smooshing using just a little piece of plastic packaging, and I was just smushing the ink pads onto it. spraying with water, and then using that packaging to move the color around. And I've done a bunch of videos over the years with distress inks doing this. And the one thing I love about this is it's one way to get a very uncontrolled look of splatter, because that is something that's the most difficult for me to do, is very, you know, uncontrolled backgrounds. I'm very much a control freak. So doing something like this, I still have a bit of a control because I can, you know, move the packaging where I want to kind of add color where I want, but I still have no control where that color's like, it's just going to splatter and make a mess. So I was letting the layers dry a little bit in between and picking up some of the excess with a tissue. But for the most part, I'm just letting them do their thing. And then I'm adding just a little bit of that green, but not too much, because green and pink make mud. And it was just going to be a mess, which I knew. So I just went a little bit with the green just to get it in there. And then again, set that one aside. Didn't do any splatter or anything because there was enough going on with that background. So I'm letting all my backgrounds dry. And then I die cut my sentiments. It's the new Big Friend wafer die from Simon, and I love it. I'm loving all these big die cut sentiments with outline dies that come with it. That just, you know, it gives you more options. You can use just the word or the word with the outline. It, you know, it makes me happy. So I die cut 2 of the outlines from green cardstock and then 2 from a deep pink. And then the word I die cut from several pieces of white cardstock, and I just adhered everything together with my multimedia matte adhesive. So really quick and easy to get these all adhered. And I just did everything, like I did all my backgrounds at one time, did all my sentiments at once, etc. It makes the process go a little quicker. And then I trimmed down my backgrounds to the sizes I wanted for the dies I was using. So for this first one, this was the last background I created with all of the splattering on using that piece of plastic packaging. So that one I just cut down, and then I adhere the hibiscus frame wafer die cut over it using my multimedia matte adhesive. And there's a separate little die, so you can die cut the center, and then you could adhere it. So you could do that in different colors if you wanted, or sponge some color. I decided to keep all the die cut white to let, you know, the colors of the background show through a bit more. And then for my card base, I actually went through my stash. I still have a bit of baker's twine in my stash that I just refuse to get rid of. And I have this green shade that kind of went with the green on the background. So I just cut a slit in the spine of my card with my craft knife, and then pulled the baker's twine through there, tied it in a bow. Easy peasy, no problem there. If you do a side folding card, you don't have to do any cutting, but I do top folding cards most of the time because I just prefer them for some reason. I just like to look at them better. I don't know. So I adhered my background with foam tape, and then adhered that sentiment with more multimedia matte adhesive. And then for the inside of the card, I'm using stamps from the Loving Heart stamp set, which I'm like pulling out constantly lately. I think almost all the cards in my most recent videos are stamped with this. But I pulled out a sentiment from that, and I'm inking it up with the Picked Raspberry Distress Oxide ink and stamping it on the inside. So that's card number 1. And then I did another card off camera, the one with the embossed background. You'll see it at the end. The footage was, I wasn't even in the frame for most of it, so I didn't even include that footage, but it was pretty basic. For this one, the second one with a hibiscus frame, I'm doing similar. I'm using the first background that I painted, and this time I'm adhering the frame with just foam tape that I trimmed down to fit the little narrow frame along the outside, and I put a little bit of foam tape down the center. So I adhered that with the foam tape. You could totally back that die cut with some acetate and turn it into a shaker card really quick and easy. I just wasn't wanting to do shaker cards today since I was doing so many cards, but it is a total option with these awesome like outline wafer dies. Like this is the 4th one of this style that Simon has released. There was that release earlier in the year with the 3 other ones. So yeah, they make great shaker cards, but I kept it simple because, again, I wanted the background and that whatnot to be the focus. So I adhered that with foam tape, and then I adhered the die cut sentiment with the multimedia matte adhesive. And then again, I'm using another sentiment from the Loving Heart stamp set, and I'm going to stamp that with the Picked Raspberry Distress Oxide ink. So once I've got that stamped, I can finish card number 4, which uses the background that I had painted, the very simple circular background that I had painted. So I trimmed it down to be about the same size as this die cut. I had die cut this DEBRA wafer die and then just trimmed it down so that there was a bit of a frame to it. Added a bit of multimedia matte adhesive, and then I'm going to adhere this directly to that background. I love the intricacy of this wafer die. It's just gorgeous. So got that adhered. And then I'm going to pop this onto my card with more foam tape, just for that little bit of dimension. So I'm going to adhere that onto my card base. All my cards are A2 top folding cards made from heavyweight white cardstock. So they're all 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And then with this one, I'm going to use the green Friend die cut. So applying my multi-medium matte adhesive to this. And then once I've got that adhered, I'm going to use yet another sentiment from the Loving Heart stamp set. I use the same stamp set for the inside of all 4 cards. I just use different sentiments from the set. And for this one, I'm going to stamp the sentiment with the Peeled Paint Distress Oxide ink. And then I'm also going to stamp, there's little hearts in that stamp set, so I'm going to stamp a few of those with the 2 shades of pink ink, the Picked Raspberry and the Worn Lipstick, just to kind of finish off the inside of the card. And I was going to leave the cards as is, but I just had to have some bling. You gotta have some bling. So I pulled out some jewels in very similar colors, or as close as I could get to kind of matching these colors. So these are all from Lucy's cards, and I've got some lime jewels, cantaloupe, rose pink, and raspberry jewels, and I sprinkled these liberally on all the cards. I'm only going to show one, because there's no point sitting and watching me adhere jewels all day. So sprinkle them liberally across all my cards, and then I'm going to adhere all of them in place with picking them up with my jewel picker, and then putting down dabs of the multimedia matte adhesive and pressing them into place. And then once I do finish all 4 cards with this, that finishes them off. So I will have links, like I said, below the video to my blog post. I'll have links to these supplies used. I'll also have a link to the new release. Stay tuned. There's a blog hop coming for this as well, which I'm participating in. So there's going to be tons of videos and inspiration. This is also, like I said, part of the color throwdown challenge for this week. So I'll have a link to that as well. So many links. Check out my blog. Always linked. First one below the video. So check it out below if you're interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting on my videos. I really, really appreciate all of the support. And I will see you all very soon in another video. Bye.